The Galactic Assembly Hall was the largest building in the known universe. It floated in empty space, far from any star, a neutral ground where all species could meet without fear. The hall itself was a massive dome made of transparent crystal, and through its walls, a million stars watched like silent witnesses. Today, the hall was full. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds had gathered to witness a sad but necessary event. The Archival Council was about to close the file on another dead species. Sat in the upper gallery, surrounded by other students from the Academy of Galactic Studies. She was small compared to most of the aliens around her. Her black hair was tied back simply, and she wore the plain gray robes that all exchange students wore. She looked ordinary, forgettable. That was exactly how she wanted it. Beside her sat a young male from the people. His skin was pale blue and his eyes were large and kind. He had been his friend for 2 years now. They had studied together, eaten together, and argued about philosophy late into the night. He thought she was from a small refugee colony on the edge of known space. That was the story she had told everyone. "Are you all right?" asked quietly. He had noticed that his hands were gripping her seat very tightly. "I am fine," said. Her voice was calm, but something flickered in her dark eyes. "Just thinking." Below them, the ceremony was beginning. The High Archivist, a being named, floated to the center of the great stage, was made entirely of living crystal. His body caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. When he spoke, his voice rang like bells. "We gather today to close the record of species number 7291, announced. Known to themselves as Homo, known to us as the humans of the Sol system. A massive hologram appeared above the stage. It showed a beautiful blue and green planet spinning slowly in the darkness. Earth. His breath caught in her throat, but she did not move. 300 standard years ago, continued, all signals from the Sol system ceased. Our scouts found only silence. Our probes detected no life signs. After extensive investigation, we concluded that humanity had destroyed itself, as so many young species do." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Some aliens shook their heads sadly, others seemed bored. Extinction was not rare in the galaxy. Species rose and fell like waves on a shore. Leaned toward, "I heard humans were quite clever," he whispered. "It is sad that they could not save themselves." Said nothing. Raised one crystalline arm. "Today, we officially declare humanity extinct. Their file will be sealed in the archive of lost species, where their memory will be preserved forever. Let this serve as a warning to all young civilizations. The universe is dangerous, and survival is never guaranteed." A ceremonial stamp appeared in his hand. It was made of pure light, and when pressed to a document, it could never be undone. The extinction decree floated before him, waiting. Stood up. "I object to this classification." Her voice was not loud, but it carried. The hall had perfect acoustics, designed so that even a whisper could be heard by all. Every single being in that massive dome turned to look at the small human woman in gray robes. His crystals flickered with surprise. In his 3,000 years as High Archivist, no one had ever interrupted an extinction decree. "What did you say?" "I said I object." His voice remained calm. She did not seem afraid, even though 10,000 alien eyes were now fixed on her. "This classification is incorrect." Security officers began moving through the crowd toward her. They were large beings, armored in black metal with weapons at their sides. Grabbed arm. "What are you doing?" he hissed. "Sit down, you will be arrested." Gently removed his hand. "I am sorry, I should have told you the truth long ago." His voice boomed across the hall. "On what grounds do you object, child? And what world do you represent?" The security officers were getting closer, had only seconds. She reached into her robe and pulled out a small device. It was unlike anything in the hall. The technology was strange, unfamiliar, and old in a way that made it look new. I represent Earth, said clearly, and I object because Earth is still breathing. She pressed a button on the device. A new hologram exploded into existence above the stage, replacing the old image of Earth. But this was not a recording from 300 years ago. This was live, real time. The timestamp in the corner proved it. The hall saw Earth as it was right now. The planet was alive. Green forests covered the continents. Blue oceans sparkled under the sun. And there, scattered across the surface, were cities. Gleaming cities under protective domes, connected by networks of light. Ships launched from orbital platforms, rising into space like silver birds. Humanity had not died. Humanity had hidden. The silence in the hall was absolute. No one moved. No one breathed. The security officers stopped in their tracks, staring at the hologram with their mouths open. Crystals had gone completely dark. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. This is impossible. It is not impossible, said. She walked down the gallery steps and somehow the crowd parted to let her pass. It is simply what we had to do to survive. She reached the main floor and stood before the High Archivist. She was tiny compared to him, a small human woman facing a being made of living light. But she did not look small. She looked like someone who had carried a heavy secret for a very long time and was finally ready to set it down. 300 years ago, we detected the swarm approaching our sector of space, explained. You know what the swarm does. It consumes everything. It destroyed 17 civilizations before it reached us. We had no weapons to fight it. We had no ships to flee, so we did the only thing we could. She paused and looked around the hall. Every being was watching her with absolute attention. We disappeared. Shook his massive crystalline head. No species has ever hidden from the swarm. It is not possible. They find everything. They consume everything. They find everything that makes noise, corrected. They consume everything that fights back, but they cannot destroy what they cannot see, so we made ourselves invisible. We went silent. We shut down every satellite, every broadcast, every signal. We buried our cities underground and beneath the oceans. We learned to live without making a sound. Her voice grew softer, but it still carried through the perfect acoustics of the hall. For 200 years, humanity held its breath. We raised our children in darkness. We taught them to whisper. We told them that one day the sky would be safe again, but until then they had to be quiet. So very, very quiet. She looked up at the hologram of Earth, her, spinning beautiful and alive above her. The swarm passed through our system and found nothing. No signals, no life signs, nothing worth destroying. They moved on, and we waited another 100 years just to be sure, and then finally we came back out into the light. Turned to face directly. You declared us extinct because we stopped talking. But silence is not death, High Archivist. We were never gone. We were just holding our breath. She smiled very slightly. And now we are ready to speak again. The Galactic Assembly Hall had seen many shocking moments in its long history. Wars had been declared within these walls. Peace treaties had been signed. Empires had risen and fallen while the Crystal Dome watched silently from the void. But nothing had ever caused chaos like this. The moment finished speaking, the hall exploded into noise. Thousands of aliens began shouting, screaming, demanding answers. Some called her a liar. Others called her a miracle. A few simply sat in stunned silence, unable to process what they had just witnessed. The High Archivist stood frozen at the center of the stage. His crystalline body flickered with colors that did not recognize. She had studied alien body language for years, but she had never seen a crystal being look so completely lost. This must be a trick, finally said. His voice was uncertain now, nothing like the confident bells from before. A holographic deception. Our probes scanned the Sol system. We found nothing. Your probes found what we wanted them to find, replied calmly. Nothing. She pressed another button on her device. The hologram changed, showing technical diagrams that floated in the air like ghosts. We developed stealth technology beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. We learned to hide heat signatures, mask electromagnetic radiation, and camouflage our structures to look like natural rock and water. Your probes did not find life because we made sure they would not find life. A tall, insect-like being pushed through the crowd. Its wings buzzed with anger. Lies. The swarm has sensors that can detect a single living cell from orbit. No species can hide from them. We did not hide from their sensors, said. We removed everything their sensors were looking for. We shut down all power sources that created heat. We stopped all movement that could be detected. We even learned to slow our own heartbeats during the most dangerous scans. She paused. For 200 years, humanity learned to be ghosts. In the upper gallery sat with his head in his hands. His mind was racing, trying to understand. For 2 years he had known, he had thought he understood her, but now every memory looked different. He remembered how always sat in the darkest corner of any room, how she could walk without making a sound, how she would sometimes stop mid-sentence and listen as if expecting danger, how she never, ever talked about her home. He had thought these were strange habits. Now he understood. They were survival skills burned into her by generations of hiding. Down on the main floor, more security officers had arrived. They surrounded in a wide circle, their weapons drawn but not aimed. They did not know what to do. She had not broken any laws. She had simply told them the truth. Floated closer to her, his crystals humming with intensity. If what you say is true, why reveal yourselves now? You could have stayed hidden forever. Looked up at him with something like sadness in her eyes. Because hiding is not living. We survived, yes, but survival without freedom is just a slower kind of death. She took a breath. My grandmother was born during the Great Silence. She lived underground for 40 years. She never saw the sun. She never felt wind on her face. She never heard birds sing. When the swarm finally passed and we came back to the surface, she wept for 3 days. Not from happiness, but from grief for all the years she had lost. The hall grew quieter. Even the angriest voices seemed to soften. We hid because we had to, continued. But we always planned to return. We knew that someday we would have to rejoin the galaxy. We just had to wait for the right moment. And why is this the right moment? Asked. Smiled very slightly. Because now we are strong enough to protect ourselves. Before she could explain further, a new voice cut through the hall. It was deep, rough, and filled with suspicion. This changes nothing. The crowd parted as Ambassador of the Dominion pushed his way forward. Was a massive reptilian being, covered in thick green scales. His eyes were yellow and cold, and his teeth were sharp enough to bite through metal. The Dominion was one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy, and they did not like surprises. So the humans survived, growled, stopping a few meters from. He towered over her, trying to intimidate her with his size. That does not make them trustworthy. In fact, it makes them more dangerous. Did not step back. She looked up at the massive alien without fear. Dangerous, we hid. We did not attack anyone. Exactly, pointed a clawed finger at her. You hid. For 300 years you watched us from the shadows. You let us believe you were dead. You gathered information, studied our weaknesses, and prepared your return. This is not the behavior of peaceful survivors. This is the behavior of predators waiting to strike. Some members of the crowd murmured in agreement, was putting words to fears that many of them felt but had not spoken. Remained calm. We watched because we needed to know if the galaxy was safe. We studied because we needed to understand what had changed while we were gone. And we prepared because we knew that some would react exactly as you are reacting now, Ambassador, with fear, with suspicion, with threats. Scales flushed darker. I am not threatening you, human. I am stating facts. A species that can deceive the entire galaxy for 3 centuries cannot be trusted. The Dominion demands that Earth submit to protective observation. We must ensure that you do not pose a threat." The hall buzzed with tension. Protective observation was a polite way of saying military occupation. If the Dominion sent their fleet to Earth, humanity would have to surrender or fight. His expression did not change, but something shifted in her eyes, something cold and hard. "I understand your concerns, Ambassador," she said quietly, "but I must decline your offer." Laughed a harsh sound like rocks grinding together. "You decline? Little human, you do not have a choice. Your planet is alone. You have no allies, no fleet, no power. What will you do if we come?" Tilted her head slightly. "I never said we were alone." She pressed another button on her device. The hologram changed again. This time it showed not just Earth but a map of the galaxy, and scattered across that map, glowing with soft blue light, were 11 points. 11 star systems. "Did you think we spent 2 centuries doing nothing?" Ambassador asked. Her voice was still soft, but it carried a weight that made even hesitate. "Earth is we love it. We would die to protect it, but we are not fools. We knew that hiding on one planet was too dangerous, so we spread." The blue points pulsed gently on the map. Some were close to Earth. Others were far across the galaxy, in regions that no one had explored carefully. 11 colonies, said. 11 hidden worlds. We built ships in secret and sent them into the void while the swarm was still hunting. We found planets that no one wanted, places that were too cold or too hot or too far from anything useful, and we made them home. His yellow eyes widened. His confidence was cracking. "You are lying." "I do not lie, Ambassador. I simply do not tell the whole truth until it is necessary." Looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of every species that was watching her. "Humanity is not a single planet anymore. We are an interstellar civilization. Small, yes. Hidden, yes, but real. And we are not interested in conflict. We want peace. We want trade. We want friendship, but we will not be bullied." She turned back to and took one step closer to him. Despite the massive difference in their sizes, she seemed to fill the space between them. "If you come to Earth with warships, Ambassador, you will find that we are very good at hiding, and very good at waiting, and very, very patient when it comes to protecting our own." She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "So perhaps it would be better for everyone if we simply talked instead." Opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. For the first time in his long career as an ambassador, he had nothing to say. Floated forward, his crystals now glowing with a steady, thoughtful light. "It seems we have much to discuss. The extinction decree will be suspended pending a full investigation. In the meantime, I suggest that the Assembly take a recess to consider this unexpected development." As the crowd began to disperse, finally stood up from his seat in the gallery. He made his way down through the chaos, pushing past confused aliens and shouting officials. He needed to find. He needed to understand. She was still standing in the center of the floor when he reached her. She looked tired now, as if holding the secret for so long had been a physical weight that she was only now setting down. "Why?" asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you not tell me?" Looked at him with something like regret. "Because I was ordered not to, and because I was afraid." She paused. "Afraid that you would look at me differently. Afraid that you would see me as a liar instead of a friend." Was silent for a long moment. Then slowly he reached out and took her hand. "I do not see a liar," he said. "I see someone who survived, and that is something to admire, not fear." His eyes grew wet, but she did not cry. She had learned long ago to hold her tears inside. "Thank you," she whispered. "You do not know how much that means." Around them, the galaxy was changing. Old assumptions were crumbling. New questions were being born. And at the center of it all stood a small human woman who had just told the universe that her people were still alive. The hardest part was over, but knew that the real challenges were just beginning. 3 days after her announcement, was brought before the Inner Council. This was not the public assembly hall with its thousands of spectators. This was a small, private chamber deep within the station, where the true powers of the galaxy made their decisions. The room was circular and dark, lit only by the soft glow of the council members themselves. 7 beings sat in floating chairs arranged in a half-circle. Each one represented a major galactic power. Each one had the authority to declare war or peace with a single word. Stood alone in the center wearing her simple gray robes. She had been offered fancier clothes, translator devices, and legal advisors. She had refused them all. She wanted the council to see her as she truly was, a student, a survivor, a human. Was there, representing the archival council. Was there too, his yellow eyes fixed on with barely hidden anger. The other 5 members watched with expressions that ranged from curious to cold. "We have your claims," said the council speaker, a being of pure energy that pulsed with slow, rhythmic light. "Earth is indeed inhabited. Your technology is indeed advanced enough to hide from our sensors. The 11 colony worlds you mentioned appear to exist, though their exact locations remain unknown to us." "They will remain unknown," said calmly, "for now." "Hist, you see, she still hides things. She admits it openly." "I admit that we are careful," corrected. 300 years of hiding taught us that survival depends on caution. We revealed Earth because we were ready. We will reveal our colonies when we are ready. This is not deception. This is wisdom. The speaker pulsed thoughtfully. "Tell us your full story, human. We need to understand how this happened. How does an entire species vanish for 3 centuries and then reappear as if nothing happened?" Nodded. She had prepared for this question. She had been preparing for it her entire life. "It began with a scientist named," she said. "She was an astronomer working at a small observatory in the mountains of Korea, a region on Earth. Most people thought her work was boring. She spent her nights staring at distant stars, looking for patterns that no one else cared about." Paused, gathering her thoughts. "One night noticed something strange. A patch of stars that should have been visible was dark, not dim but completely black. At first she thought her equipment was broken, but when she checked, everything was working perfectly. The stars were simply gone." The council members leaned forward slightly, their attention fully captured. "Spent months studying this dark patch. She discovered that it was moving. Slowly, yes, but definitely moving. And as it moved, more stars disappeared. She calculated its trajectory and realized with horror that it was heading toward Earth." "The swarm," said quietly, his crystals flickering with old memories. "I remember when they passed through this sector. We lost 3 observation posts." "We did not know what it was at first," continued. "Shared her discovery with other scientists, and eventually it reached our governments. It took 5 years of study before we understood the truth. The swarm was a machine intelligence, vast and mindless, that consumed everything in its path. Matter, energy, life. It took what it needed and destroyed the rest." She clasped her hands in front of her. "We had 50 years before it reached us. Our leaders gathered in secret to discuss our options. Some wanted to fight. They proposed building weapons, warships, anything that could hurt the swarm. But our calculations showed that we would lose. The swarm had destroyed civilizations far more advanced than ours. We did not stand a chance." "Others wanted to flee," she continued. "They proposed building generation ships, great arcs that could carry millions of people to distant stars. But we did not have enough time. We could build perhaps 100 ships, carrying perhaps 1,000,000 people. That would leave billions behind to die." Snorted. "So you chose to hide like cowards." Looked at him without anger. "We chose to survive. There is no cowardice in choosing life over death, Ambassador. There is only common sense." She turned back to the council. A third option was proposed by a young engineer named. He was brilliant but strange, the kind of person who saw solutions where others saw only problems. He asked a simple question: what if the swarm could not find us? Everyone laughed at first. How could you hide an entire planet, but was serious? He had studied the swarm's behavior carefully. He noticed that it only attacked things that produced detectable signals: heat, light, electromagnetic radiation, radio waves. If a world was cold and silent, the swarm passed it by. The speaker pulsed with interest. This matches our own observations. The swarm ignores dead worlds. Exactly, said. So propose that we make Earth look dead. Not actually dead, but dead enough to fool the swarm's sensors. It was an insane idea. It would require the cooperation of every nation, every government, every person on the planet. It would require sacrifices that no species had ever made before. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. Our leaders agreed to try. For the first time in human history, every country worked together toward a single goal. We called it Project Silence. The next hour was spent explaining the details. Described how humanity had built vast underground cities, carved into mountains and hidden beneath oceans. She described how they had developed new technologies that produced no heat, no light, no signals of any kind. She described how they had trained their children to live in whispers, to walk without sound, to breathe without being detected. The hardest part was the psychological adjustment, said quietly. Humans are social creatures. We need sunlight, open spaces, fresh air. Taking those things away from us was like taking away part of our souls. Many people struggled. Some went mad, but most adapted because they knew the alternative was death. She spoke of her grandmother, who was born 10 years into the silence, had never known the world before. She had grown up in underground tunnels, lit only by dim artificial lights. She had learned to read and write, to love and laugh, all without ever seeing the sky. My grandmother used to tell me stories about the sun, said. She had never seen it, but her parents had described it to her. A great ball of fire that hung in the sky and gave warmth to everything it touched. She used to dream about it. For 40 years, she dreamed about standing under the sun. Her voice grew softer. When the silence finally ended, when we came back to the surface, my grandmother was the first person in her family to step outside. She stood there on the grass, looking up at the sky, and she wept, not from happiness but from grief. She had spent her entire life underground, and now that she was finally free, she realized how much she had lost. The council chamber was completely silent, even had stopped fidgeting. That is the cost of survival, said. We saved our species, but we lost our way of life. We sacrificed our freedom to preserve our future. And now, 3 centuries later, we are finally ready to reclaim what we gave up. The speaker pulsed slowly, considering everything it had heard. Your story is remarkable, but I must ask the question that everyone here is thinking. Why should we trust you? You deceived the entire galaxy for 300 years. You watched us without our knowledge. How do we know you are not still deceiving us? Nodded. You cannot know for certain. Trust must be earned over time. But I can tell you this. We did not hide because we wanted to deceive you. We hid because we wanted to live. And now that we are safe, we have no reason to hide anymore. We want what every species wants: peace, prosperity, a place in the galactic community. She spread her hands. We have nothing to gain from conflict. We spent 3 centuries learning patience. We are not interested in conquest or domination. We simply want to exist, openly and honestly, as members of this great galaxy. Slammed his fist on his armrest. Pretty words, but words are cheap. How do we know you are not building weapons in those hidden colonies of yours? How do we know you are not preparing for war? Met his gaze steadily. You do not know, and that is exactly the point. If we wanted war, we could have stayed hidden and prepared for centuries more. We could have built fleets in secret and struck without warning. Instead, we chose to reveal ourselves. We chose diplomacy over conflict. That should tell you something about our intentions. The council members looked at each other, exchanging silent communications through glances and subtle gestures. Finally, the speaker turned back to, the council will deliberate on this matter. You will be informed of our decision. In the meantime, you are free to move about the station, but you may not leave until we have reached a conclusion. Bowed slightly. I understand, thank you for listening. As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. One more question, human. You said your grandmother dreamed about the sun for 40 years. What did you dream about? Paused at the doorway. She was quiet for a long moment. I dreamed about the stars, she finally said. About traveling between them freely without fear. About meeting other species and learning from them. About being part of something bigger than myself. She looked back at the council, her dark eyes shining with something that might have been hope. That dream is why I am here, and I will not give up on it. She walked out of the chamber, leaving the 7 most powerful beings in the galaxy to consider the future of humanity. In the corridor outside was waiting for her. He had not been allowed inside, but he had refused to leave. When he saw emerge, tired but unbroken, he smiled. How did it go? He asked. Took a deep breath. I told them the truth. Now we wait and see if they believe me. Nodded and fell into step beside her. For what it is worth, I believe you. Looked at him with genuine warmth. Thank you, that means more than you know. They walked together through the winding corridors of the station, 2 friends from different worlds, facing an uncertain future. Behind them, the council began its deliberations. Ahead of them, the galaxy waited to learn whether humanity would be welcomed as friends or feared as enemies. The silence of 3 centuries was finally breaking, but the echoes would take much longer to fade. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within days, every inhabited world knew the story. Humanity, the species that everyone had mourned, was alive, and they had been watching from the shadows for 300 years. Reactions varied wildly. Some species celebrated. A peaceful race of traders sent messages of welcome and offered to establish trade routes immediately. The ancient scholars who valued wisdom above all else expressed admiration for humanity's patience and strategic thinking. Several smaller species, who had themselves narrowly escaped extinction, reached out with messages of solidarity and support. But not everyone was happy. The Dominion, led by Ambassador, formally protested humanity's admission to the galactic community. They argued that a species capable of such deception could not be trusted. They demanded that Earth reveal the locations of all hidden colonies or face consequences. Other military powers quietly agreed. The Empire, a distant relative of the machine swarm that had once threatened Earth, expressed concern about this new player on the galactic stage. The Collective, a hive-mind species that valued transparency above all else, struggled to understand how any culture could keep secrets for so long. In the middle of all this chaos stood. She had become, without wanting it, the face of humanity. Every news broadcast showed her image. Every discussion mentioned her name. She received thousands of messages every day, some friendly, some hostile, many simply curious. Helped her sort through them. They sat together in her small quarters on the station, surrounded by floating holographic messages that filled the air like digital snowflakes. This one is from the Trade Consortium, said, highlighting a message. They are offering to send a delegation to Earth to discuss commercial partnerships. Save it for later, replied, her eyes scanning another message. We need to focus on the political situation first. Trade can wait. And this one held up a message that pulsed with angry red light. It is from something called the Pure Species Alliance. They are demanding that humans be quarantined on their home system and forbidden from interstellar travel. Sighed, delete it. We cannot respond to every piece of hate mail. Nodded and dismissed the message. I never realized there was so much prejudice in the galaxy. There is prejudice everywhere, said quietly. Humans learned that lesson long ago. On Earth, we spent centuries fighting each other over differences that seem tiny now. Skin color, language, religion, geography. We only stopped when we faced something that threatened all of us equally. She looked out the window at the stars beyond. Perhaps that is what the galaxy needs, a common enemy that reminds everyone how similar they really are. The swarm was supposed to be that enemy, pointed out, but it did not unite the galaxy, it just made everyone afraid. Fear divides, agreed. Hope unites. That is why we chose to reveal ourselves now, while the swarm is far away and the fear has faded. We want to offer hope, not fear. Their conversation was interrupted by a chime at the door. Touched a control panel, and the door slid open to reveal a small, elderly alien. It had soft gray fur, large purple eyes, and moved with the slow dignity of someone who had seen many centuries. Elder said, bowing slightly, "I was not expecting you." Elder was the senior representative of the ancient scholars. He had been one of the few council members to speak in humanity's favor during the initial debates. "May I enter?" asked, his voice gentle and warm. Of course, stepped aside to let him in. Moved slowly to a chair and settled into it with a soft sigh. His purple eyes studied carefully. "I have been watching you, young one. You carry a heavy burden." "Someone must carry it," replied. "I was chosen because I was already here, already integrated into galactic society. Our leaders thought I would be the best bridge between worlds." "A wise choice," nodded, "but I did not come to discuss strategy, I came to warn you." Felt a chill run down her spine. "Warn me about what?" "Ambassador is not acting alone," said slowly. "He has formed a coalition with several other military powers. They are calling themselves the Stability Council. Their goal is to prevent humanity from gaining any real power in galactic affairs." Stood up, his blue skin flushing darker with alarm. "They cannot do that. The Assembly has not even voted yet." "They do not need the Assembly's permission to form a coalition," replied. "And they are already applying pressure behind closed doors. They have threatened to withdraw from trade agreements if humanity is given a seat on the council. They have suggested that military action may be necessary if Earth does not comply with their demands." His expression remained calm, but her hands had curled into fists. "What do they want exactly?" "Three things," held up his fingers one by one. "First, they want the locations of all your hidden colonies. Second, they want inspectors stationed on Earth and every colony to monitor your activities. Third, they want strict limits on your technological development. No new weapons, no new ships, no new power sources without their approval." "They want to control us," said flatly, "to keep us weak and dependent." "They want to feel safe," corrected gently. "Remember, you surprised them badly. They thought you were dead, and now you appear with hidden colonies and unknown technology. They are afraid of what else you might be hiding." "We are not hiding weapons," said firmly. "We are not preparing for war, we just want to live in peace." Sighed, "I believe you, but belief is not proof, and fear does not listen to reason." The room fell silent, stared at the floor, thinking hard. Everything she had worked for, everything humanity had sacrificed was at risk. If the Stability Council succeeded, humanity would be trapped. Not in silence this time, but in chains. "What do you suggest?" she finally asked. Leaned forward. "You need allies. Real allies, not just friendly voices. You need species who will stand beside you if things turn violent. And you need to offer them something valuable enough to make that risk worthwhile." "What could we possibly offer?" asked. "Humanity has been hiding for 3 centuries. What do they have that the galaxy does not?" Was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly she began to smile. "Time," she said. Tilted his head. "I do not understand." "We had 300 years of isolation," explained. 300 years of focused research and development, with no contact from the outside world. Do you know what happens when a species has no distractions? When they can devote all their energy to solving problems without worrying about wars or politics or trade disputes? She stood up and walked to the window. "We did not spend the silence cowering in caves. We innovated. We invented. We solved problems that the rest of the galaxy has been struggling with for. She turned back to face. Medical technology that can cure diseases considered incurable. Energy systems that are completely clean and incredibly efficient. Agricultural methods that can grow food in any environment. And yes, stealth technology that can hide an entire planet from the most advanced sensors in existence. His purple eyes widened. You developed all this during the silence. What else were we supposed to do? Asked with a slight shrug. We had time, we had minds, and we had motivation. The threat of extinction is a powerful. She walked back to stand before the elder. We are willing to share our knowledge, not sell it, share it, freely, with any species that is willing to stand with us as an ally. Was silent for a long time, processing this information. Finally, he nodded slowly. This changes things. They will be very interested in your trade technology. They would love to study your medical advances. Even the collective might reconsider their position if you can offer them something valuable. And the Stability Council asked. They will be angry, admitted. But if you can build a strong enough coalition, they will not dare to act against you. War is expensive, and no one wants to fight a battle they might lose. Nodded. Then that is what we will do. We will build alliances. We will share our knowledge. We will prove that humanity is not a threat but a gift. She looked at with determination in her eyes. Elder, I need your help. I need introductions to species who might be sympathetic. I need advice on how to navigate galactic politics. And I need someone wise enough to tell me when I am making mistakes. Chuckled softly. You are asking an old scholar to become a diplomat. I am asking a friend to help me save my people. Was quiet for a moment. Then he stood up slowly and placed his small, furry hand on shoulder. Very well, young one. I will help you. Not because I owe humanity anything, but because I believe in what you represent. A species that chose patience over violence, survival over pride. The galaxy needs more voices like yours. He moved toward the door, then paused and looked back. Prepare yourself. The next few weeks will be the most difficult of your life. You will face enemies who hate you, allies who doubt you, and challenges you cannot imagine. But if you stay true to your principles, if you remember why your ancestors chose silence instead of destruction, you will succeed. He smiled, a gentle expression that softened his ancient features. Humanity held its breath for 3 centuries. Now it is time to speak. Make sure your words are worth the wait. The door closed behind him, leaving and alone with the weight of the future. Reached out and took her hand. Are you ready for this? Looked at him, at the stars beyond the window, at the vast galaxy that had just learned humanity still existed. No, she admitted, but I will do it anyway. That is what humans do. We face impossible situations and we find a way through them. She squeezed his hand gently. We did not survive 300 years of silence just to fail now. Whatever comes next, we will face it together. Outside the window, the galaxy waited. And somewhere, in 11 hidden systems scattered across the stars, humanity watched and hoped and prepared for whatever the future would bring. The final vote was held on a day when the crystal dome of the Galactic Assembly Hall seemed brighter than usual. Sunlight from a distant star streamed through the transparent walls, casting rainbows across the thousands of gathered beings. It felt like the universe itself was watching. Stood at the center of the main floor, exactly where she had stood 3 weeks earlier when she first revealed humanity's survival. But everything had changed since then. She was no longer a mysterious student in gray robes. She was the official representative of the human collective, chosen by Earth and the 11 hidden colonies to speak for all of her people. She wore white symbols of her new position, a simple white suit, clean and elegant, with a small blue pin on her chest that showed Earth and its sister worlds connected by thin lines of light. Her black hair was still tied back simply. Her dark eyes were still calm. But there was something different about her now. a confidence that came from surviving impossible odds. The gallery was packed, was there, sitting in the front row with a group of scholars who had become advocates for humanity. Elder sat nearby, his purple eyes twinkling with quiet pride. Representatives from dozens of species filled the seats, watching with expressions that ranged from hopeful to hostile. Ambassador was there too, his green scales dark with barely controlled anger. The Stability Council had fought hard against this vote, using every political trick they knew. They had threatened. They had bribed. They had spread rumors and lies, but in the end they had failed. Too many species had been impressed by what humanity offered. Medical technology that could cure plagues, energy systems that could power entire planets without pollution, agricultural methods that could end hunger on 100 worlds, and perhaps most importantly, the simple promise that humanity would share these gifts freely with anyone who treated them as equals. They had been first to sign an alliance treaty, then the collective, who had been won over by humanity's offer of transparent technology sharing. One by one, species that had been uncertain or hostile had changed their minds. The coalition that had built was now larger than the Stability Council itself. The crystalline High Archivist floated to the center of the stage. His body glowed with solemn light. The Galactic Assembly has deliberated on the matter of species number 7291, he announced. The species known as humanity. After careful consideration of all evidence and testimony, the Assembly is now ready to vote. He raised one crystalline arm. The question before us is simple. Should humanity be recognized as an active civilization with full rights and privileges, including a permanent seat on the Galactic Council? The hall fell absolutely silent, felt her heart pounding in her chest, but she kept her face calm. This was the moment. Everything led to this. Those in favor of recognition, please signal now. Lights began appearing across the hall. Green lights, the signal of a yes vote. They started with the section, then spread to the collective and dozens of other species. More and more lights appeared, filling the hall with a gentle green glow. Counted them silently. 50, 100, 200, the numbers kept climbing. Those opposed to recognition, please signal now. Red lights appeared, but far fewer. The Dominion, the Empire, a handful of other military powers. His coalition held firm, but it was clearly outnumbered. His crystals hummed as he processed the results. The vote is complete. By a margin of 347 to 82, the Galactic Assembly officially recognizes humanity as an active civilization. Earth and its colonies are hereby granted full membership in the galactic community, with all associated rights and responsibilities. The green lights in the hall flared brighter, celebrating the decision. Cheers erupted from multiple sections. They burst into song, their melodic voices filling the dome. They clicked their approval in ancient rhythms. Closed her eyes for just a moment, letting the reality wash over her. They had done it. After 300 years of silence, after decades of preparation, after weeks of desperate diplomacy, humanity had finally been welcomed back into the galaxy. When she opened her eyes, she saw pushing through the crowd toward her. His blue face was split by the widest smile she had ever seen on her. He reached her and grabbed her hands. "You did it," he exclaimed. "You actually did it." "We did it," she corrected, "all of us together." She looked around the hall at the celebrating aliens, at the angry faces of and his allies, at the endless stars beyond the crystal dome. So much work remained. Treaties to negotiate, technologies to share, trust to build. The Stability Council would not give up easily. There would be challenges and setbacks and moments of doubt. But for now, just for this moment, she allowed herself to feel joy. After the official ceremony ended and the crowds began to thin, slipped away from the celebrations, she needed a moment alone, a chance to process everything that had happened. She found her way to an observation deck on the far side of the station, a quiet place with a wide window that looked out at the stars. Found her there an hour later. He did not ask how he knew where to look. After 2 years of friendship, he had learned to read her patterns. "Everyone is asking for you," he said quietly, coming to stand beside her. "The one to toast your health, the one to discuss philosophy. Elder wants to introduce you to 17 different ambassadors." "I know," said. "I will return soon, I just needed a moment." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars drift past. "Can I ask you something?" said eventually. "Of course." "Why did you come here? Not to the station, to the academy 2 years ago. You must have known that revealing yourself would be dangerous. You must have known that the galaxy might not react well. Why take the risk?" Was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "My grandmother used to tell me stories about her childhood. Not the happy stories, not the brave stories, the sad ones. She told me about the children who never played outside, about the couples who got married in underground chambers, never knowing if they would see the sun together, about the artists who painted pictures of skis they had never seen, trying to capture something they could only imagine." She turned to look at. "For 2 centuries my people lived in fear. They survived, yes, but survival is not the same as living. They sacrificed everything, beauty and freedom and joy, just to keep their hearts beating." Her eyes shone with unshed tears. "My grandmother's generation was born in the dark. My mother's generation was born in the dark. I was the first generation to grow up knowing that the sky was safe. But even then, even after we came back to the surface, the fear remained. People whispered instead of talking. They flinched at loud noises. They kept their curtains closed at night, afraid that someone might see the light." She looked back at the stars. "I came here because I wanted to break that cycle. I wanted to prove that we did not survive just to hide forever. We survived so that someday we could stand in the light again, so that we could laugh without fear, so that we could make friends with strange beings from distant worlds and not wonder if they were going to destroy us." She smiled, a real smile full of hope. "Hiding is survival, but speaking is living, and I wanted my people to finally truly live." Nodded slowly. He understood now. This had never been just about politics or diplomacy. It was about healing wounds that were 3 centuries old. "What happens now?" he asked. Took a deep breath. "Now we work, we build. We prove that we deserve the trust the galaxy has given us. It will take years, maybe decades. There will be setbacks, and his allies will not stop trying to undermine us. Some species will never accept us. Some of our own people will struggle to adjust to life in the open." She straightened her shoulders. "But we will keep going, we always have. That is what makes us human." They stood together in silence, watching the universe spread out before them. Stars beyond counting, worlds beyond imagining, a galaxy full of wonders that humanity was finally free to explore. "I should get back," said eventually. "The celebrations will not wait forever." "Before you go," reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. It was a crystal, pale blue and perfectly clear, shaped like a tiny star. "This is a tradition. We give these to close friends during important moments. It is called it represents the bond between 2 souls." He pressed it into his palm. "You are my friend, my true friend. I am proud to have walked this path beside you." Looked at the crystal, then at. Her eyes were wet, but she was smiling. "Thank you," she whispered, "for believing in me when you had no reason to, for standing with me when it would have been easier to walk away, for being my friend in a galaxy full of strangers." She slipped the into her pocket, next to her heart. "Whatever comes next," she said, "we will face it together." They walked back toward the celebrations, toward the future, toward the 1,000 challenges that waited for them. Behind them, the stars continued their endless dance, witnesses to the moment when humanity finally stopped hiding and started living again. Earth was still breathing, and now, at last, its children were free to breathe with it. Far away on a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star, an old woman named sat on a hill and watched the sunset. She had received the news that morning. Her granddaughter had succeeded. Humanity had been accepted. The long night was finally over. Smiled, tears streaming down her wrinkled face. For 40 years she had dreamed of the sun. And now, because of a brave young woman with calm eyes and an unbreakable spirit, future generations would never have to dream at all. They would simply live. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold and pink. And somewhere among the stars, hidden from sight but never forgotten, 11 worlds watched and waited and hoped. Humanity had survived the silence. Now it was time to see what they could do with the noise.